if they're rolling and very happily rolling, you do just have to rip off the bandaid. You have to do it from a safety perspective. You just have to take them out of the swaddle and get through it, and it often will mean a lot more hands-on settling, a lot more support. But if you do it's often the adjustment period is maybe a few days.
It can be so hard because you get sleep on track and then they have this big developmental kind of growth and then sleep's off track. And then it happens again and then again and then again, and it's just like whiplash.
And you do almost need to kind of reassess sleep and the skills of sleep and what you're doing and routines and all that sort of thing every time they go through change in development.
And we know babies kind of go in and out of, just like us, in and out of deeper sleep and lighter sleep. And sometimes in that lighter sleep,
Ngala acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging in the spirit of reconciliation. We acknowledge the importance of children being raised with connection to culture, community and family.
We are talking about sleep today, everyone's favourite topic. And we do just want to start out by saying that sleep can be really personal for a lot of families. So this advice is really for parents who are struggling with sleep or would like some extra support with sleep. And if it's not a problem for you and your family, then it's not a problem. So we have Beth back today. Thanks for coming back, Beth.
Thank you.
And do you want to give, for people who didn't listen to season 1, a little bit of a spiel about yourself and what you do at Ngala?
Yes. I work on the parenting line. So I'm a parenting line practitioner and I'm also a mum. I have 2 children at home. And it probably took me a long time to accept that children and babies wake up overnight. And it's not until my kids have been older that they still wake up that I've learnt to accept that babies and children wake
they do.
and need us.
yeah, it sounds like radical acceptance.
Yes, yes.
Not just acceptance, radical.
Radical, yes. Yeah.
Paradigm shift with your approach to sleep.
Yes.
No, so sleep is everyone's favourite topic usually. So in terms of the first year, there's a lot that goes on for babies developmentally. Mm-hmm. What can parents look out for and what might they notice in terms of sleep with development?
I think probably the first thing that you'll notice when they're coming out of that newborn phase is what everyone talks about, the 4-month sleep regression or progression or whatever you want to call it. And that's the main kind of biological shift that happens with sleep and brain. So where sleep is controlled in the brain for newborns, it's quite instinctive. They sleep when they're sleepy.
They sleep in the day, they sleep in the night. They don't know the difference.
Random. Yes. And then during that kind of 3, 4, 5 month mark, where sleep is controlled changes and it becomes quite cyclical, and you can start seeing catnapping, waking more frequently overnight, maybe 1 to 2 hours. And that can be a big change because you've got a newborn baby that maybe sleeps for a few hours during the day. You start getting those longer stretches overnight, and then all of a sudden they start catnapping and waking frequently. So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes that happens.
Yeah, it's what we get a lot of calls on in Parenting Line.
Yeah.
My baby was sleeping and now they're not.
Yeah.
And it's really hard having to tell parents actually it's a good thing. It means that baby's brain is doing what it needs to be doing.
Yes.
But it can be exhausting.
It's really hard to have a baby that's waking every 1 to 2 hours overnight.
And sometimes that can be a little short period, and then some babies sort of seem to get through it, and other babies it does take them longer and it can be a rougher time for a bit longer.
Yes. Yeah. And I think also there's so much information about this 4-month sleep progression that mums or dads start to kind of like catastrophize or predict like what's going to happen. They try and like sort a problem before it's even a problem. And so it's best just to see how your baby's going to respond to that change in development. And so like you said, some babies, you have a few rough weeks and then all of a sudden sleep feels a little bit easier and it's back on track. Or you might find a few months down the road you're still waking every 1 to 2 hours and you're a zombie.
Really hard.
Yeah.
And going alongside of this sometimes is the point where we might have to unswaddle our baby. So that's another sort of environmental factor that impacts sleep around this age as well.
Yes.
Maybe sometimes a little bit later depending on when they start to show signs of rolling.
It can really coincide.
It can really sometimes collide though, can't it?
Yes.
And then it's the perfect storm of no sleep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've got a baby that's going through those sleep cycles, that's learning to roll, its arms are out for the first time.
Hitting its face all over the place.
Yeah, knocking the dummy out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Startling still.
Yeah.
Even though they're rolling, they can still have that startle reflex.
Yeah. And it can be really tough.
So when do we typically put babies' arms out?
So usually it's the Moro reflex is why we swaddle babies, because they have that really big startle. And then at around maybe 3 or 4 months, that starts to diminish, that reflex. But if babies are showing signs of rolling, so we don't want them to roll with a swaddle on because then we've got a risk of SIDS. So if they start to show signs of rolling, and if they start to show signs, it's better to start unswaddling than until they're
Sooner rather than later.
Yeah. But then, there's some babies who maybe aren't as mobile or aren't as motivated to move, and you might not need to unswaddle them until closer to 4 or 5 months.
Some of those bigger babies.
Yeah.
It's a lot of weight to move when you're a bit chunky.
To haul over.
Yeah.
Yes.
They still have the same size muscles.
Yes.
But bigger head.
Yeah. Bigger booty.
Yeah. And what are the signs of rolling? Like, what are we looking for?
So probably like rolling, getting their legs up and trying to flip their legs over, or back arching on the mat and getting their head right to their side.
Yeah. Or that accidental roll where they kind of
Yeah.
surprise themselves. Maybe they've weight shifted a little bit in tummy time and then suddenly they're on their side or their back.
Yes. And so often if you're finding them on their side, or they're just really like mobile on the mat during playtime, that's a good sign that rolling's coming.
And how do you get their arms out? How do we start that process?
So if they're rolling and very happily rolling, you do just have to rip off the bandaid.
Yeah.
You have to do it from a safety perspective. You just have to take them out of the swaddle and get through it. And it often will mean a lot more hands-on settling, a lot more support. But if you do it's often the adjustment period is maybe a few days. But if you've got a little bit of time, maybe you might start with naps, just an arm out, or practice naps with no arms in a swaddle. And you can still maybe swaddle tightly across the chest so they get the feeling of pressure but their arms are out. Or you might start the beginning of the night unswaddled, and then as it gets further into the night and they may be waking a bit more frequently after that first feed, you might then put them back in the swaddle. Yeah. So it really depends on what your baby's doing.
Yeah, and what your capacity is.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's easier just to kind of ride it out 3 days, get it done. And sometimes you just don't have the capacity to be able to do that.
And if if you're going, I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off and do it, but it gets to 3 a.m. and you're like, we haven't slept, then you put them back in the swaddle for the night and then you try again the next day.
Survival. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that idea of that's why when you start thinking about this, when you're seeing those signs, as opposed to kind of being in a bit of denial.
Don't look at the baby that's rolling.
No, I didn't see that.
Just put them back.
Yes.
The fairies. So that then, you can pace yourself a little bit through that transition. Yeah.
So 4-month regression, big developmental change affects sleep. What else can affect sleep as they go through that first year?
Probably anything that's to do with their development. So whether it be language development, gross motor development, fine motor skills, any skill that they're working on, babies are wired to just practice it all the time, and they often want to practice it in the cot when they're meant to be sleeping.
In the middle of the night.
Yeah. So you find these babies if they're rolling, they just want to roll. Or if they're learning to crawl, you'll find them at 2 a.m. in the morning rocking on all fours, screaming because they just want to crawl and practice and they can't figure it out.
Banging their head against the side of the cot.
Or
if they're starting to babble, sometimes you start getting a real vocal baby.
Yes. Yeah. Or you've got babies that have realised they've got like pincer grip and they can grab things, so they're grabbing the bars, knocking the bars, trying to make music, or they're pulling up to stand.
And getting stuck.
Yeah.
Yes.
And get up, but they can't get down.
Yeah.
Yes. And so any change in development, and I think often parents will call and say, they're going through an 8-month regression, they're going through a 10-month regression, but it's not kind of the same as that biological regression that happens, or that change that happens at 4 months. It's often coinciding with what development they're going through and what change they're going through with skills.
Yeah. And it can be so hard because you get sleep on track, and then they have this big developmental kind of growth, and then sleep's off track again.
Yes.
And then it happens again, and then again, and then again, and it's just like whiplash.
Yeah. Yes. And you do almost need to kind of reassess sleep and the skills of sleep and what you're doing and routines and all that sort of thing every time they go through a change in development.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we know babies kind of go in and out of, just like us, in and out of deeper sleep and lighter sleep. And sometimes in that lighter sleep, that's when they start maybe practicing some of these skills, right? And then they might even wake themselves up a little bit more than maybe what they were doing before, where before maybe they could link a sleep cycle in the night. Now they're kind of got so much action going on in their little brain of whatever skill that they want to practice that it interrupts that.
Yes.
And we go, why could they do it before, but they can't do it now?
Yeah.
And that's why thinking about, okay, well, what are they actually doing in the day? Are there things that they're really into that they're practicing that could be impacting all that brain action at night time as well.
I think the positive thing is if they have done it before, you can say, look, we can get back there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time and practice and getting back into the swing of things, but it's really hard.
I also like to say to parents that, your baby's going through this tough time because they are learning a skill, but once that skill is integrated and feels kind of natural to them, that's another skill in their little toolbox. So, for example, with the rolling, like once they've got the rolling, under wraps, then actually now they can move their body and get themselves into a comfortable sleep position that suits their little self. And that's great, right? That gives them something that they can be doing a little bit more, and then us as parents doing a little bit less.
Yeah.
We're still often helping with sleep a lot, as Beth started in the first year.
Yes.
Like mentioned earlier,
Lots of
that
support.
we're still supporting babies a lot with sleep in the first year, aren't we?
Yes. And I think the tummy sleeping is another big thing that people call about. So
I was just going to say parents do seem to panic.
Yes.
When your baby does start to sleep on their tummy. It's scary.
Yes, and their instinct, because it's drilled into you from the beginning, baby sleep on your back, it's safe to be on the back. But if a baby is rolling independently and is unswaddled, whatever position they find themselves in, whether that be on their side, in their tummy, on their tummy, their face against the mattress, that's a safe spot for them to be in. And we don't have to change their position if they're happy and comfortable. And so sometimes it can be really hard because babies will flip because they're practicing that skill of rolling, so they'll flip onto their tummy, and then parents will rush in and want to settle them back onto their back. Whereas if we kind of give them time and space to maybe be on their tummy for a little bit, maybe see if we can settle them on their tummy, maybe a bum pat or a back rub, and support them to feel a bit more comfortable on their tummy. Often when babies find their tummy, like you said, then they can be a bit more comfortable. It's a bit more of a natural.
It is more natural.
Sleeping. Well, just being able to move your body is a bit more natural.
When you have the skill to move your body, a newborn baby doesn't necessarily, they're just a little ball of little reflexes and physiological flexion. Now your baby's developing, they've got more capacity to volitionally move their body. So, of course, they're going to feel more comfortable and autonomous when they actually can do that.
Yes.
It's also like that protective factor. All your vital organs are here. Sometimes sleeping on your back doesn't feel very safe.
Yeah.
And you've got that startle reflex. Whereas when you're on your tummy, you're kind of a bit more protected. You're able to,
And we do see, babies and young children sleep in that, yoga child's pose position with the kind of the bottom up and the kind of all crouched down. And there's a reason we call that child's pose because it's how they like
so
to
cute.
comfortably
Their
sleep.
bum in the air.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, Beth, settling strategies in the first year. What are some things that parents can do or some tools that are going to help their child?
Yes. So I think it depends on age and so what you were doing for a 4 or 5 month baby, and also your expectation of what this 4 and 5 month old baby can do versus maybe a baby that's closer to 10 or 11 months. But probably one of the best things that you could do if you're wanting to promote some independent sleep is give them time and space in the cot awake. And that's not leaving them to cry and be unsettled. But if they're settled and they're happy and they're content and they've had a nice awake window, they've got a full tummy, leaving them in the cot to just see what they do and not necessarily rushing to pick them up or intervene if they're not distressed. So I kind of say often on the parenting line, think of settling as stepping stones. So your first stepping stone would be maybe offering some verbal reassurance. So if you've got a little baby, whether it be 4 or 5 months or 8 or 10 months, you've got a little baby on the cot and you've popped them in the onto the cot mattress and they're starting to get a little bit upset. You might just offer some verbal reassurance. Sometimes just your voice is enough to calm them and soothe them. If it's not, then you kind of move up to the next step. And what's that? That's maybe putting your hands on them and providing support through the bars of the cot or over the cot. And it might be bum pats, might be patting the mattress, rubbing their back, kind of something that you kind of figure out what is soothing for your baby. And then if that's not working, you then move to the next stepping stone, which might be picking up and holding your baby and regulating your baby. And so for a 4 or 5 month baby, you might only do that a few times before you think, all right, we've had enough, I'm just going to rock my baby to sleep, or I'm going to feed my baby to sleep, or do whatever I need to do. And for an 8 to 10 month, when you're closer to 1, you might persist with that, trying to settle them on the cot surface for a bit longer. So you might be holding them, helping them regulate, helping them calm down, and then putting them back on the cot and seeing if they can settle on there. And so it's just a matter of moving through those steps and responding to them as they need you and what they're communicating, knowing that a baby that's just stressed and unsettled isn't probably going to fall asleep. Mm-hmm. And that's where we need to come in and co-regulate with them and help support them.
And parents know their babies better than anyone. So you'll know if your baby needs extra support or if they're actually doing okay.
Yeah.
Trust your gut instinct.
Yes.
Like we always say, you're the expert in your baby. And every baby is so different. But also every parent's capacity for what they can listen to or feel in themselves is different as well. And if you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, then your baby might pick up on that.
Yes. And then that's always a good, when I also say, your baby, if you're finding it difficult to regulate your baby and co-regulate, then that's a good time to stop trying and just do whatever you need to get your baby to sleep.
Yeah. And you're not undoing any of your good work.
No.
I think that's the one thing is that parents feel like, well, I've done all of this hard work and then I still had to rock them to sleep. But you actually stepped in and did what you needed to do to get your baby to sleep. And all that practice is building that neural pathway that next time it might be a little bit easier.
Yeah. And what we're talking about there is responsiveness, right?
Absolutely.
And the just right challenge. So we're looking at our baby's age, where they are developmentally, what skills they have, how we've been getting them to sleep for maybe the last however many months, and we're creating that little challenge there that's appropriate for us and for them. And then we're responding to ourselves and to them with what we can cope with in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looks different for everyone.
Yeah. Yes.
What about tools? What can babies use that's independent from parents?
Yeah, so I think a really good tool to introduce from 7 months is a comforter. So you can absolutely involve it in your pre-sleep routine and your wind down routine earlier, but from a SIDS perspective, it's not safe to have a comforter inside the cot until a baby's 7 months. But you might wear it down, if you're breastfeeding, or even just the smell of a not breastfeeding parent, you can pop it down your top for a few days so then when it's in the cot it smells like you. You can use it when you're feeding, whether it be bottle feeding or breastfeeding, between you as that kind of connection. When you're cuddling your baby, singing to your baby, and then hopefully the aim is when your baby finds that comforter in the cot and they grab it, it reminds them of you and the comfort you've given them. And so then they seek comfort in this little object. And some babies take to it. They love it, and you have to pull it away from them when they're 10 years old. And then there's other babies who mums or parents will say, "Oh, my baby's just not into a comforter," but it's a good tool to at least try and introduce. And it sometimes is helpful then when they transition to daycare or transition to like sleeping at grandparents' houses or to take that little piece of comfort from home. So I think a comfort is a good tool to use. A dummy can be tricky, because from about 4 to 7 or 8 months, a dummy falls out usually every kind of sleep cycle, so 1 to 2 hours, and a baby doesn't quite have the ability to put it back in. So sometimes you'll have a baby, the dummy works really well when they're a newborn, and then all of a sudden it's falling out and mum's like, I'm waking up every 1 to 2 hours and putting it back in. They fall asleep straight away, but then in 1 or 2 hours I'm putting it back in. So there's that. That can feel a bit of a hindrance before it gets
to be helpful.
To be helpful again, and it gets helpful again at about 7 or 8 months when your baby can pick it up and put it back in their mouth.
And even then, though, like at that age, a baby may have that developing sort of pincer grip to do that, but maybe in the middle of the night they
can't
still
find it.
don't,
No.
they don't have the capacity. They may be able to do that in the daytime,
Yes.
but in the middle of the night when they're tired or they want it straight away, they still might be asking for help.
Oh, absolutely, yes. But it also can be helpful to like sprinkle lots of dummies in the cot. So you can have like 5 or 6 little landmines just around. So wherever they kind of roll or put their hand.
One might just pop into its
Yes,
mouth.
we just hope for the best. So the dummy, I think up between that kind of 4 to 8 month mark can become a tricky tool for some babies.
Yeah. There are some babies that they'll fall asleep with their dummy, and then as soon as they sort of go into that more deeper sleep, it drops out and
they're
it
not
doesn't
phased.
even bother them. So if that's your baby and that's working for you, then that's okay.
Yeah, there's no right and wrong with
Yeah.
dummies. It either works or it doesn't. And if it works, that is excellent.
Yes, and if it's not working, you could always try not giving it for a few days. And is life easier? Is life harder? What's happening?
Yeah.
And if we do remove the dummy, we would then expect a baby to need some extra help to fall asleep, because we're taking away one of its little
to
tools.
replace it with something
So we
else.
might think that baby might need a little bit more hands-on settling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people as well might be afraid to leave the dummy because they're like, I really need it for the car, or other times that when that child is unsettled. So, and again, we sometimes say that's okay, use it for the car and then just, but for cot time, you're doing other techniques.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Save it sort of for emergency situations. Or if you're out and about and you're in the shops and you need your baby to go to sleep or not be crying.
And that's
Use the
totally
dummy.
okay. It's not, again, we do get parents sometimes worrying about that sort of all or nothing, like, I have to do it perfectly. But actually what we're just doing is creating opportunities for our baby to learn to fall asleep in variable ways.
Yes.
And with a dummy, it's okay. And then ideally, maybe without the dummy in case we lose it or it's not around or they can't find it.
Yeah. I think it's helpful as well that you start, if you do need to keep going in and replacing the dummy, getting the dummy, bringing it to your baby's hand and then bringing your baby's hand to their mouth and just kind of getting that movement. And then hopefully they'll start learning, okay, I can actually do this myself.
Yes.
And it might take a while, but it's just a good way to introduce that.
Yeah. Plant the seed of that's what they could be doing on their own in the cot. Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about that hands-on settling. Some of the terms that sometimes get thrown around are like responsive settling. What does that mean? I think we've probably touched on it, but let's just define what that term is.
Yes, responsive settling. So responding to their needs, listening to their cries, watching their body language, and then offering support depending on their age, their development, and what they need. And so that might be, picking them up and rocking them and cuddling them. It might be, again, going in and just maybe offering some verbal reassurance or some physical touch on the cot surface, but really kind of building on the support you're giving. So not necessarily going in straight away and picking your baby up, obviously if that feels right for you, but you don't feel like you need to, going in and picking your baby up and rocking them straight to sleep. Maybe kind of adding just different, responding to their cries and their distress, offering them different support and comfort.
A little bit of that watch, wait, wonder as well. So kind of, as sometimes when our baby wakes in the night, we just go, especially if we've got a partner maybe that we're worried that, or other children, we think, we've got to stop, we've got to turn that crying down straight away. But actually, sometimes it's okay to, especially with an older baby, to watch, wait, wonder. Okay, what's going on here? Are those cries really intense? And yes, my baby really, really needs me. Or actually, are they working it out? Or if I look on the monitor, is it that they've kind of rolled into a position they're trying to get comfortable? Giving them the opportunity to try that, and then but being aware that you are going to go in there and help them as they need help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what you were saying with watching body language, so sometimes babies, particularly older babies, will be, they're crying could be quite loud because they've discovered their voice. They're almost kind of like yelling or shouting.
Very insistent.
But then you look at their body language and they're still...
Their eyes are closed.
They're laying on their tummy, their head's to their side, their hands are kind of like relaxed. If you couldn't hear them, you would think they were asleep.
Yeah.
And so you think, okay, maybe they don't need me as much as I think they need me right in this moment. And, I'm going to give them maybe a few minutes, a few seconds, whatever feels right for you. And then you might kind of watch, is the crying slowing? Is it turning into a whinge? Or is their body starting to move a little bit more? Are they starting to get a bit restless, starting to roll? Are their eyes opening? Do their faces look distressed?
Yeah, are they stuck standing up there and getting more sort of emotionally disorganised? Like, as you said, we don't want a baby getting to that state where their system's getting so dialed up that you go, well, no one could sleep like that.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, they're clearly not going to do it by themselves. That's when they need us.
Yes. And often we'll get parents call and say, my baby just goes from 0 to 100. And so then that can be really hard to do that kind of watch, wait and wonder, because you've popped them in the cot, you've stepped out, and then they're instantly in that really distressed, unregulated state. And that can be exhausting for parents, but it's just you kind of still do that process of watching them, going in when they need you, helping them regulate and calm down, and maybe stepping out. And maybe you're doing that more often than with a baby that's got a little bit bigger tolerance of being in the cot on their own. So, you know, there's some mums or dads might be going into that bedroom or into that room to settle their baby every minute. And that can be exhausting. And then there's some that are, you know, going, oh, no, I can leave my baby for 5 or 6 minutes before I have to go in. And so there's no right time. And I always say that to parents, don't look at the time when you're settling a baby. You don't have to kind of go, I've got to wait 5 minutes, I've got to wait 10 minutes. It's really responding to what they are telling us. Yes. Yeah. And if they're distressed and unregulated after 30 seconds, then really you need to go in and support them.
And any practice is worthwhile.
Yeah.
30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, all of it is worthwhile practice. Yeah.
Because we also don't want them to start to hate the cot and hate their room. We don't want them to be in this awful distressed state all the time in the cot. We want them to know that mum and dad will always come back to me. They're going to help me. They're going to help co-regulate.
Yes, that trust.
Yeah.
And that full circle. Sometimes some parents can find it hard to kind of leave the room, or maybe their baby is developmentally getting that separation awareness, and that kind of leaving the room, coming back in doesn't seem to be working. In those situations, sometimes we say, well, you can try those hands-on settling just sitting next to the cot.
Yeah.
We can send that message that, like, mum is here, mum will help you, or dad is here, dad will help you. But we're not, you know, getting you out of the cot necessarily. You know, we're trying to kind of calm in this space here. And, of course, if we need to get them out, we do. But that's another approach as well that's that sometimes we recommend if parents say, oh, I've tried going in and out and it ended really badly and I feel really overwhelmed, I don't want to do something like that again. Well, then there are other options.
Yes.
It's like, well, let's sit next to the cot. Sometimes we say sitting next to the cot as opposed to leaning over saves your back, but it also sends that different message to your baby to say, hey, mum's sitting next to the cot, that means I should be sort of laying down.
And you're not going anywhere.
And I'm not going anywhere.
Sitting,
When we're standing over the cot, often that's the posture that we do when we get our babies out of the cot. So it can send that confusing message. And we also have to understand our babies understanding the world through sort of all these environmental cues as well as our language and the words we're saying. That's all developing. But so that visual cue of us sitting next to the cot creates and sends that message through that ritual that, hey, I'm also meant to be sort of staying put here as well. And and then when mum stands up, that means she's going to help me. But when she's sitting down, she's maybe going to be holding my hand, maybe patting my bum, patting the mattress, using her voice. So there are options depending on what you've done or where you're at or what you feel as a parent you have capacity for.
Yeah.
And that also won't work straight away.
Yeah.
So if you've had a baby that for the first however long you've fed and rocked to sleep, the first day of you, like, right, we're going to change some sleep. I want them sleeping for longer. Let's make some changes. That first day that you make those changes isn't going to be easy because your baby hasn't got the memo. They're not like, oh, yep, I'm on the same
They're confused and a little cross.
Yeah. And so if you're trying to sit next to the cot but you've never done that before, they're going to be angry at you. They're going to be like, hang on a minute, this is weird, like mum, dad, whoever.
This is not the norm.
Yeah, you're meant to be picking me up. Where's the boob? Where's the bottle? Where's my cuddles?
Where's my football that I'm bouncing on?
It's almost like you said as well, those stepping stones. So it's like stepping back gradually. Yes. So if your baby needs to be rocked to sleep, they need that movement to go to sleep. It might be that you start off holding and not rocking, you know, and then putting them down, which can be really hard.
Yeah.
But you almost have to replace something with something else. Because you can't just put them in the cot and be like, good night.
And then sit there next to them and go, they're there.
That's
Off
right. They don't understand.
Yeah.
So, it can be a very 2 steps forward, 1 step back process. But yeah, I think parents just need to give themselves some grace because it is really hard.
Yeah. I also like that idea of just those little tiny micro steps. So if you've been rocking or being on a ball or walking around, try to still hold your baby but be still, like what Jen was saying. But also then you might add something like maybe voice. So you might, hum a song or something that you can do that you think, oh, that's going to be my bridge for when we go into when I stop holding maybe and try to do in the cot. We've kind of added the voice. We've maybe taken away the walking around of the 8.5 kilo little baby that's killing our back to be more stationary. We're adding the voice as our bridge for when we go into the cot because that's what we're going to use there. So it's like these little kind of stepping stones. That's a nice way.
It's all problem solving, isn't it? Around the baby and their temperament and your temperament and where they're at in development and everything. It's just all problem solving. And it can change day to day.
Yeah. And actually, I like the perspective of taking a problem-solving approach because we started off saying your baby's going to change, your baby's sleep is going to change. So if we take a problem-solving approach, then we're not trying to fit our baby into some sort of formula. We're actually trying to sort of scaffold the environment around our baby of where they're at that moment. And so if you as a parent can develop those problem-solving skills, you're going to feel like you've got more capacity when things start to go a bit wobbly. You go, okay, what did I do last time? What worked? Let me try some version of that, as opposed to kind of going, oh, I'm following this sort of strict guideline of more manualised and I can't get my baby into that. They're not waking up at that time or they're not sleeping for that length of time or they didn't want their feed at that time. And now you just feel like you failed before you even started.
Yeah. And I think that goes into what is people talk about normal sleep. And so what is normal sleep? What do we expect from babies in the first year?
A huge range of normal. So there's low sleep needs babies, high sleep needs babies. There's babies who will cope really well with catnapping and they'll have 3 or 4 catnaps a day, or they'll have 2 catnaps a day, or there'll be babies who want to sleep for 2 hours 3 times a day. There's no specific time or, length of time for sleep or total amount of time for sleep. On our Ngala website, we've got ranges, which you can look up, but it's really individual. And so it's going back to just looking at your baby. And so having an idea of awake windows is helpful to guide your day and give your day rhythm. So a 4-month-old is going to have a shorter awake window than an almost 1-year-old. And they're probably going to be on more naps than, you're close to a 1-year-old. But then there might be babies who cope well with a 6 p.m. bedtime or cope well with an 8 p.m. bedtime and then they're waking to start the day at 5, waking to stay the start. It's also variable.
Absolutely.
And some babies are more sort of rhythmical as well, like they sort of they fall into a pattern more obviously than others. So some, I think, and that comes down to a bit of temperament, I think, as well. Some people are more sort of routine than others, and that's the same with babies. So there may be some babies, it doesn't necessarily matter what time they go to bed, they'll always wake up with the birds.
Yes.
And others, if they go to bed later, they'll wake up later. So they're, understanding that there is variability there, and it's not necessarily anything you're doing as a parent. It might just be that some babies are more routine than others.
Yes.
And awake windows, it's a term that we hear a lot, people calling up about awake windows, particularly on the parenting line. What are they and what are normal awake windows?
So again, big range of normal, but you're thinking for maybe a 4-month-old, say for example, maybe an hour to 2 hours, and then maybe closer to 1, an awake window of 2.5 to 3 to 4 hours. But we're also looking at our baby. So if they're showing us tired signs and it's been an hour and you go, oh, but they should be up to an hour and a half or 2 hours, maybe offering them a sleep. An awake window, the first awake window of the day will always probably be shorter. So they've still got melatonin in their system, particularly if they've had a rough night or they've woken a few times, they're probably going to be ready for their nap sooner rather than later. And then you might go, oh, I can extend the awake window between nap 1 and 2 or 2 and 3. And it's also if your baby is coping really well with longer awake windows and they're happy and they're eating and they're drinking and they're developing well, then great, that might suit your baby. Whereas if you've got a really cranky baby who's irritable all the time, they're not feeding, they're not maybe drinking their milk as well as they should be or enjoying solids, then maybe you could think, well, let's make the awake window shorter and see if more sleep might be helpful.
Yeah, catching up on a little bit of sleep.
Yeah.
And sometimes even if babies do have one nap that's a little bit longer, you know, they have a really kind of solid maybe hour and a half or 2 hours or perhaps even longer, then their awake window after that might be able to be a little longer because they've got more in the tank because they've had that really good sleep. Whereas those cat napper babies, they might have more of a pattern of sort of that on that shorter side of that awake window.
Yeah.
And overnight, should babies still be waking?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, you started with
yes,
that, didn't you?
my children are 5 and 7 and they still wake. Yes. Yes, we would hopefully expect that they wake less as they get older. But waking for connection, reassurance, hunger are still really normal overnight for probably a long time, but particularly in that first year. And so a 4 or 5 month old baby still might be waking 2 or 3 times a night for milk or comfort or to be resettled. And then maybe closer to 1, you might be thinking maybe they're only waking maybe for the second half of the night. But then you've also got babies that might still wake twice a night. So it's also depending on looking at what are you having to do to get them back to sleep? Is it a quick feed and you pop them back down and that's working for you? Then great, keep doing that. But if they're waking every few hours and you're having to really actively resettle them and it's really hard work and you're all awake for hours on end, then maybe that's something that we could support you with.
Like looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, yes.
And we always do, don't we? Like if something's falling apart at night time, often we want to look at what's happening in the day because they impact each other.
Yes.
Beth, thank you so much for talking to us today about sleep.
Thank you for having me.
In this first year and what is to be expected. And really what I've taken from it is that there's no real normal. It's a wild ride. And
a wild ride indeed, yes.
And parents are saints.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to Parenting with Ngala. The topics covered in our podcast are general in nature and the information might not suit everyone. If you're in Western Australia and would like to chat about a specific challenge, you can talk directly to the Ngala Parenting Line by calling 9368 9368. For all other links and resources, check out the Ngala website and the show notes below. Thank you again and see you next time.